This video is going to be all about excavator thumbs. The thumb is this attachment here, which allows the machine to grab stuff. Alright, so just like the thumb on your hand works really well for scooping, but when you go to pick something up, it's hard to grab it without a thumb. You're just pushing it away. With a thumb, very easy to pick stuff up. Same thing on the excavator. So you can ask this animal here who doesn't have any thumbs, Levi, what's that? See, when he's got to pick something up, he's got to use his mouth. So these machines are kind of sold just to dig, but probably 50% of the time I'm bringing them out on jobs where I'm not even digging and I'm just using them to pick stuff up. So the common things I'm picking up will be stumps, boulders, and logs, but also sometimes scrap metal, I-beams, or anything else that's strong enough to be grabbed by a thumb. Alright, so with the exception of this Kubota here, all these machines didn't come with thumbs and they had to be added in the aftermarket. Alright, so when you bring a machine on a job where you're just digging, sometimes the thumb can be in the way and annoying, so most of them can fold up out of the way. I'll show you how it works on this machine. Okay, so you can see with the thumb down, I can still dig just fine. Well, if the ground wasn't frozen like a rock. Now the problem is once you get far away from what you're digging. So watch. So now I'm far away, I go to dig. See, the thumb is right in the way. That's pretty annoying. But still, digging up close is no problem. So I'll show you how you stow the thumb out of the way on this machine. So you put a little bit of pressure on it with the bucket. Pull this pin out right here. See, now this thumb on this machine, it's so big that moving this by hand, it's just too heavy to do. But you don't have to. What you do is use the bucket. And now the thumb is stowed out of the way and there's no extra parts laying around anywhere. That's a pretty easy system on this machine. Okay, now you can see with the thumb out of the way, I can be all the way far from my work and dig just fine. So that's a pretty good thumb on this machine. You know, it's pretty painless to do. But, you know, pretty much the way to work it is if you're on a job where you're digging all day, you want the thumb up out of the way. If you're on a job where you're grabbing stuff, you know, pretty often, you want the thumb to be down. And you can still dig just fine, but, you know, you just got to work a little closer to yourself. And now to put the thumb back in the lower position to use it again. Pull this pin out. And now the important part, you got to line that up right. So I can kind of look at it. You can see, you know, obviously there's the hole right there. So if I go up right about, probably there. Let's see, did I get it? Drops right in. All right, now let's talk about the thumb on this thing. Alright, so the thumb on this Komatsu, it's another manual thumb like on the Hitach, but this is a much smaller machine. But the thumb on this thing, I never fold it on this. I leave it down all the time, and for whatever reason, it's just not in the way on this thing. You know, even when I'm pretty far away, you know, I mean, it's in the way, but it's not bad. And even though this machine is so small, this thing is very handy, you know, for moving stuff around. Let's see if we can grab this rock. Hang on. Yeah, we got it. Look at that. Almost. Well, you know, we got it. All right, so let me show you one circumstance where this thumb is annoying on this machine. So we'll get a scoop of dirt. All right, so when you go to load the truck, you see what happens. Since this machine can barely reach the truck, you know, all the dirt is almost falling out of the bucket. Now, this dirt's pretty sticky right now, so it actually, you know, actually works. But I'll show you how to move the thumb out of the way in this one. All right, so to undo the thumb on this one, it's just bolted on. Now, I know this is kind of an annoying process. These bolts could be replaced with pins or something. That'd be a lot easier. But I just leave this down all the time. So that's why I've never even bothered. We pull that out. That. Now this thing just folds up like this. Put a bolt in there. I think somebody made this thumb, but what they did, they welded those things on there. So there's no loose parts anywhere, and this isn't getting lost. See, now when I go to load it in the truck, I can get a decent amount of curl on it. Alright, and I know this machine looks small, but bringing this thing out on a tree job where there's a lot of logs and stuff to move around, you know, it's a lot better than not having something. Plus you can pick logs up. Well, the thing that this machine is great for is doing firewood. So like if I have a pile of logs, I'll have them all stacked up, and it's kind of a pain to go into a pile of logs cutting them because the chainsaw is hitting the dirt, it's hitting other logs, it's annoying. I use this machine, pick a log up, rotate 90 degrees over my firewood pile, and you can use the chainsaw and cut, and you're in the air the whole time. You're not hitting any dirt, not hitting other pieces of wood. The piece drops off clean. It's very quick for doing firewood work. All right, let's talk about the thumb on this one. All right, so this is another machine with a manual thumb on it. And the thumb on this machine works pretty well. I generally just leave it down all the time, even if I'm digging. But on some jobs, when I'm just digging and not grabbing anything, the thumb on this thing can be annoying and in the way. All right, so I'll show you what we got going on here. The thumb on this thing is actually kind of funky. And I got this weird hardware in here right now. because this thing's pretty good at losing these pins. And I lost them on a job, and that's kind of what the homeowner had. To get it off, you just pull out these 2 pins. And this thing's getting pretty sloppy again, but you know, it is pretty strong, and I haven't had any issues with it. So at some point I'll be refurbishing this thumb again. And then this whole thing comes off like that, and then it's usually just laying around somewhere on the job site like that. You know, it doesn't stow on the machine or fold up or anything. But I have been dealing with that thumb like that for years, and it is working fine. I've been getting plenty of jobs done like that. Okay, when I got this machine, it actually came with this thumb on it. But the problem was, whoever installed it on here, this was too small of a thumb for this machine. And it was too short and not strong enough. And you can see here, especially with this long bucket, this thumb would only make it to about here on that bucket. And you could never grab anything with it. So then I made it longer, so I made this cardboard cutout, and then I cut that out of steel, and then welded it on there. And then that made it longer, but then the thing, it kept breaking, so I eventually had to give up on it folding. Alright, that should be good. Usually bolts, they've been lasting the longest. Sometimes you put pins in there and you're doing brush work, they disappear instantly. Alright, now let's talk about the thumb on this machine. So we got a couple things different on this one than all the others. One, this thumb probably came on this machine from the factory. All these other machines, the thumbs were added on in the aftermarket. The other main difference is this is a hydraulic thumb, meaning the thumb isn't just fixed in one position the whole time where you have to manually move. This thumb can be moved from inside the cab by stepping on a pedal, and it's pretty nice. Let's go over the advantages of having a hydraulic thumb. Alright, so one very nice thing about a hydraulic thumb is you can go from digging with no annoying thumb in the way to then having full access to your thumb the whole time just by either, it's usually pushing a button, or in this case it's a foot pedal. So that's very handy. You know, you'd be digging, then all of a sudden you find something you need to grab. Let's say this piece of ice. So now I can grab that instead of trying to scoop it. So the other nice thing with a hydraulic thumb is being able to grab stuff that's close to you. So on a machine with a regular thumb, if I needed to grab that log, I wouldn't be able to do it. So for example, you know, you'd have a thumb that's like in that position the whole time, and it would just keep rolling away from you. So what you'd have to do with the regular thumb is either push stuff further away from you or track further away from it, which really isn't bad. But with this hydraulic thumb, essentially I can just go down, that's where my thumb might be on a fixed thumb, but then I can just put my thumb down all the way and grab stuff that's right next to me. So then it's nice if you need to fine tune the position of stuff, you can move the thumb and the bucket at the same time, and it's pretty handy. Now, I got one big disadvantage with hydraulic thumbs, and that's even the case on this one, is that they're usually not as strong as the bucket, and it's pretty frustrating. I put my thumb down to grab something, and watch what happens when I curl my bucket. See, it pushes the thumb back. I'm not touching the thumb. I don't want the thumb to come back. It's supposed to be staying there. You know, the digging cylinder is powerful, and usually they won't put a strong enough thumb cylinder. I don't know why they do it. That's a common problem on a lot of hydraulic thumbs, and you know, I gotta list it as a disadvantage to hydraulic thumbs. Plus, it's just, more stuff to go wrong. Hydraulic thumbs are nice. Yes, I do prefer them, but I have no problem running a machine with a manual thumb. All right, here's a machine here that doesn't have a thumb on it. For whatever reason, this machine being 25 years old, no one ever put a thumb on it. I just got this machine. Let's go fix that. Let's go put a thumb on this thing. Okay, so now we're at the point where we got to order our thumb. So a few things to go over here. One, getting the length correct is very important here. So what you do, put the machine up like this, have it in about the position where it would be about touching the thumb. Then you're going to measure from the boom here to the end of the thumb. So we're getting, a little over 30 inches. All right, and as far as ordering thumbs goes, there's a lot of different brands. You could make one. There's one company selling them on eBay that are dirt cheap. Quality-wise, those ones are, I wouldn't get the cheapest one. All right, so this is what I ordered here. This was not a cheap thumb. The thing was like about 800 bucks, a little over, but it looks nice. So, there's thumbs as cheap as 150 bucks, but you get what you pay for with this stuff. There, now gravity's working with me. All right, so it's probably gonna go right about there. I wouldn't try to do this job with a 110 machine, but a big 220 MIG welder like this is fine, or a stick welder's fine too. All right, so I don't want to finish welding it yet. I just want to make sure there's no weird clearance issues. The only potential issue I'm seeing is I don't want this to come in contact with that when the thumb is up out of the way. Alright, so that's how it stows when it's not in use. I don't see any place to stick this though. I guess you just gotta hold on to it. Alright, this is what they want you to do. This goes here. Alright, that's how they want you to store it. Well, that's not the best design because it takes tools to do it, but still alright. I may try to swap out some of these bolts with pins. Alright, let's just make sure there's no clearance issues. See, the thumb is gotta come up. The bucket curled all the way. Let's put a spacer. Another thing you gotta remember, this machine has a hammer. And a lot of times, when you're hammering, you don't care about that thumb. You just want that out of the way. So, out of the way, no weird clearance issues are happening. But still the hammer, when you're running that, you're not curled up all the way anyway, so. So now we know we have no clearance issues here. The thumb is actually centered now. It was on crooked before, and the length is right about perfect. So let's burn this thing on. And don't go and weld the entire of one side, because what happens when you weld something like that, the weld is hot and then it cools and it shrinks, and that it'll bend it. So like, you could almost use it in your favor. Say the thumb was off a little bit, you weld it on one side to pull it over. In this case, we're perfectly straight, so I'm gonna weld a little, you switch back and forth. All right, here's a tree that blew over in the wind last week. Let's get this cleaned up. All right, that thumb is working pretty good. So that's nice. I'm sure my friend Jesse will want these logs for his sawmill. And then I got a nice little campfire already right there. All right, so I want to talk real quick about why I did not make this a hydraulic thumb. Installing a hydraulic thumb is essentially the same process, just pretty much buying it and welding it on there, and it'd have a hydraulic cylinder just like on the Kubota there. The reason I did not do that is because this machine is not plumbed for it. But it almost kind of looks like it is, because we have the 2 hydraulic lines here that are set up to run the hammer. But the problem with those lines, if you hook the thumb up to that, you would go and step on the pedal and the thumb would go one direction and then it would just get stuck in that direction. That is not a two-way system. It's just a one-way system that someone installed aftermarket for running the hammer. So you can see the pedal here that controls it. That's just it. That's all it does is go down. You can't lift it up or anything. It only goes the one way. Now, to plumb that to have a hammer is doable, but the amount of work that's required to do it, in my opinion, isn't worth it. I am fine using a manual thumb. The reason I'm probably fine with it is because I started out using manual thumbs and probably have thousands of hours using them. I bet you people that would start out with a hydraulic thumb first would probably be more frustrated trying to run a manual thumb after being very used to running a hydraulic thumb. That's the same, the plumbing is the same issue with this other Yanmar and with this Hitach. They just don't have the third function, or they don't have that extra function plumbed into the system. Now, this machine, this Komatsu over here, actually does have the third function, or the extra function, and that's these lines here. So this machine could easily have a hydraulic thumb. So essentially a hydraulic cylinder could be fitted on there and then hooked up to those lines, and then this pedal right here would control it. And see, that's a two-way pedal. And I've almost done that in the past, but it just never seemed like it was necessary. You know, the thumb, for whatever reason, on this thing is very nice to use the way it is. One other thing I want to point out about the thumb on this Kubota is that the way it hinges. See, all these machines with the thumbs added on, the hinge point is in a different spot than the bucket. On this machine, the bucket and the thumb hinge together, and it works very well that way, because when you grab stuff at different spots, the end of the thumb always meets the end of the bucket. Okay, so see, when this is hinged all the way down, the thumb pretty much falls inside of the bucket. Now that wouldn't work very well. See, on this machine, since the thumb and the bucket hinge in the same spot, they always line up perfect. So if you're getting a machine with a thumb on it, this is a desirable option. So I mentioned before about making sure to have the thumb be the right length. Watch what happens when I try to grab a log with this very long bucket. So see what happens when the bucket's too short? Now I can still grab this if I get really far away from it, but see, I can grab it, but just barely. Not good enough to really pick it up. All right, that's why it's important to make sure you order the right thumb for your machine. It's also, you know, make sure you order it for the right size too, because a thumb that's too small often won't be strong enough. You know, you put a small thumb on it and just bend everything right up. The thumb has to be as strong as really has to be twice as strong as the bucket, because sometimes when you get a log at a weird angle or something, it really can put a lot of pressure on these thumbs. So it's important that they don't just break. They need to be super strong. One funny idea I had to make a machine like this have a hydraulic thumb easily is all these minis have this function where you can rotate the boom side to side. I never use that. So one thing you could do is take that cylinder out of there, put in a stiff rod, and then use the hydraulic lines that were running that, and then run them to your hydraulic thumb. And that would be an easy way to get, you know, another spool, another hydraulic circuit out of the machine to run the thumb, because other than that, it'd be a lot of work to add one. So that's kind of the easiest way I can think of to add a hydraulic thumb to this machine. It's just, I don't think it, let me know what you guys think of an idea like that. It's kind of a funny idea. I'm just fine with it like this though. All right, let's talk quick about adding thumbs to backhoes. All right, so since, you know, backhoes, they look kind of like an excavator, and a lot of people think, oh, you could just add a thumb to them. And you do see it sometimes, but it doesn't work out as good as having a thumb on the excavator for a few reasons. I'll explain why. And this backhoe here, the order I got these machines in, when I got this backhoe, I didn't have any of these excavators except for that little Komatsu, which was too small for a lot of stuff. So since I had this, I wanted a thumb on this. But I'll explain why it never happened. All right, so the thing about adding a thumb to a backhoe, the main problem with this backhoe was it has this extendable dipper. Now, all right, so with this extendable dipper, there's really no place to mount the thumb, because you can't mount it here because this slides up inside of this, and you could maybe mount it here, but one, this and this is too far away even with it all the way in. Plus you wouldn't be able to use the thumb unless, you know, the thing was in all the way. So that was the main problem on this backhoe. Now some backhoes are the other way, where this thing sleeves over this part, and then you could mount a thumb, and some backhoes just don't even have this extending dipper, so that wouldn't be a problem on them. So the other problems with adding a thumb to a backhoe is with mobility. Watch, so I can, one, it's slow. See, to really use the backhoe, you gotta put down all these outriggers, put the bucket down, and then you have a stable tractor to work from. So watch, when I go grab this stump, you can probably get it. See, now you can still grab stuff with it. The problem is then once you go to drive around, because then, look, you got to pick up your outriggers, then you got to turn the seat around, pick up the bucket, and then you can drive. But it's just kind of a slower process. You know, when you're doing work with a thumb on an excavator, you can just grab something, you don't have any outriggers, you don't have to turn your seat around, and then you could turn 180 degrees the whole body, travel anywhere, because the tracks have much better mobility than the wheels, especially in mud, and then put your stuff down. It's a lot faster. The backhoe, yes, it can kind of work, but not as well. The other issue with this backhoe is the front end is too light once you grab stuff with the back. Yeah, you could get a scoop of dirt in the bucket and kind of have that the whole time, but you know, it's just annoying. But you can see how light this is. All right, so you can see when I go up a hill with something in the back, the front end of this thing is just too light. Look, I can't even steer. Watch out, Levi. So it's, I mean, yeah, you could go up the hill backwards. Yeah, you could put a scoop of dirt in the front. But I just never did it. Once I got the excavator with the thumb, I didn't even care about putting a thumb on this thing. I barely use this machine. An excavator is much more handy than a backhoe. See, I can't even steer. gear right now. My wheels are completely off the ground. So if you really wanted to put a thumb on a backhoe, you could. You know, it's still good for picking up logs or doing firewood or something, but overall it's less useful than a thumb on an excavator. Really, backhoes should have grapple buckets. That would be really cool. I've never seen one. Sometimes you see them with 4-in-1 buckets, but never a grapple bucket. Alright, so anyone who missed the opportunity to get one of these last time, since I cut up the other track, I got another set of them. So they're signed by me and Levi. And I didn't dip Levi's foot in paint a bunch of times. I made a mold of his foot. I'll show you how I did that. Hey Levi, what's this? What's that right there? What's this? All right, hang on. Give me a foot. Give me a foot. Liquid rubber. Footprint stamp. That looks good.
Yeah.
All right, so the link is in the description for these.